Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Halib.
I'm Sabib.
And I'm Lindz.
And this is Cinema Worms Podcast.
I am just back from seeing Honey Don't, a film which I feel should have had some more punctuation in it than it does in the title. But that's just me, I'm a grammar weirdo. So, directed by Ethan Coen, who co-wrote the screenplay with his wife Trisha Cook, Honey Don't is described as the second installment of a, quote, lesbian B-movie trilogy, unquote, which began with 2024's Drive Away Dolls, a film that I frequently call to mind whenever I need to feel, annoyed and disappointed at the same time, and which also starred Margaret Qualley. I think I called her character in Drive Away Dolls an itchy little cat, which I stand by it, that covers it. In Honey Don't, Qualley also plays a queer character, Honey Donahue, private investigator. And despite the 70s colour palette and incredible wardrobe with the sort of high-waisted trousers and silky shirts and beautifully done curls, the clothing would not look out of place in my own wardrobe. But despite this, the film is actually set in contemporary time, which absolutely threw me in the first few minutes. I never quite recovered from that. The point where Honey is actually sitting at her desk flicking through a Rolodex, and her Luddite tendencies are pointed out by her assistant, but it just sort of felt to me that I wasn't quite sure why, if you were going to choose to go with that kind of vibe and cinematography, you wouldn't set it in an earlier time period. I have no idea. Maybe they just wanted to mash those things together. So Honey's new client, Mina, dies in a car crash before she can actually meet Honey. So the detective doesn't know what Mina might have wanted her to investigate. What follows is at the same time a simple yet kind of confusing trail of clues and things that aren't clues at all but are just loosely related to the plot or sometimes feeling completely unrelated, which leads Honey before long to a church headed up by Drew, a pastor who is just continually having on-screen sex with his female parishioners. He's played with enthusiasm by Chris Evans. Obviously, Evans is best known for playing Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, in the Marvel Universe, but here he's channeling more of his character from the parody film Not Another Teen Movie. If you haven't seen that, go and treat yourself. After I saw the trailer for Honey Don't for the first time, I admit I was fully ready to make this film my entire personality for a period of time. I mean, it is queer Aubrey Plaza and Margaret Qualley. In fairness, it is better than Drive Away Dolls, a film that I genuinely kind of hate. And I don't use that word very often, but I genuinely feel annoyed when I think about it. It had so much potential and it just... Anyway, so... yeah, Honey Don't is better for me, much better, but it's not without its own problems. In my opinion, the first half is much stronger than the second half. The ending left me with nothing much to hold on to. If you are kind of expecting to have some sort of satisfying sort of feeling of closure, you're probably not going to get it here. And it's not because it is part of a trilogy, because everything is kind of wrapped up. If you compare it, for example, to Love Lies Bleeding, it doesn't quite have that same full circle feeling at the end of it. So one of the other things I found interesting about this film is, I mean, it has a really interesting cast, like Charlie Day's in it from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and Lena Hall, who plays Honey's niece Corin. Now, this was interesting to me because... Lena Hall has won the Tony Award for her performance as Itzhak in the 2014 revival of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is one of my favourite films of all time, and I have seen it live but not on Broadway, which is a sadness. And her performance there also earned her a Grammy nomination for the musical's official album, and she actually made history by becoming the first person to play both Hedwig and Itzhak in the same production during the national tour of the musical in 2016. Again, another film that you should all go and see if you haven't seen Hedwig and the Angry Inch. It is an angry and sad and funny rock musical. And I can't give away any more than that because when you watch it, you will understand why the title is there. So, in conclusion, Drive Away Dolls, a really lackluster start to this trilogy. Honey Don't, certainly a much better middle. Will there be a gangbusting end? We don't know. I believe the next one might be coming out in 26, and of course I will go and see it. And again, if it's starring Margaret Qualley, like kissing girls, that's pretty good. I'm just not sure that I'm necessarily the audience for this. I feel like I'm always hoping for something more than I'm getting. But you never know. It may grow on me afterwards. Today I'm going to be talking about the Toxic Avenger Unrated, which I saw because Zabib is once again gallivanting elsewhere. Now, the Toxic Avenger has been labelled as a superhero dark comedy splatter film, which essentially means just absolute truckloads of gore. Written and directed by Macon Blair, who was in Green Room and also Small Crimes, with my bae Nikolai Coster-Waldau, aka the hottest and mostly unrepentantest bad boy of the Game of Thrones universe, Jaime Lannister. Macon Blair's directorial debut was a 2017 indie film I'm yet to see called I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, which is just a fantastic title. And he's also a comic author who has produced work for Dark Horse and Marvel, so it makes sense that he was in line for this particular film. Now, the film was actually made in 2023, but due to its content, distributors were reluctant to pick it up. I sort of see why. And it had its UK premiere at the Midnight Madness strand of the 78th Edinburgh International Film Festival on August the 19th, 2025, less than 2 weeks from when I'm recording this. Shout out to my home city here. We will show things that other people will not, and they will be awesome. So, Toxic Avenger stars Peter Dinklage, best known for his performance as Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, but who has since appeared in other big superhero action franchises like X-Men. I think the last thing that I saw Dinklage in, or at least heard his voice in, was Wicked, where he voiced Dr. Dillamond. That went a decent way to erasing my memory of him in the pretty bad 2021 film Cyrano. Here he plays Winston, who works as a janitor at this just horrible, horrible corporation, which is dumping chemicals into the surrounding water and just generally violating health and safety regulations in a very comic book way, but also a way which these days feels pretty realistic. Winston is a stepdad to Jacob Tremblay's Wade, and ever since Wade's mother died, Winston has assumed total parental control to the best of his ability, which is frankly not particularly great. He's really not cut out to be like, maybe a stern parent or one that provides useful support. He's just kind of trying to cheer Wade up a lot and support him in ways that Wade is not really finding all that helpful. However, Winston is doing his best, and he does genuinely seem to love the kid. Now, Jacob Tremblay is probably best known for playing the boy born in captivity in 2015's Room, but he has been in quite a lot of films considering how young he is. He's only 18 and he's been in just like a dozen movies. Doctor Sleep and The Recent Life of Chuck, to name but two. Kevin Bacon plays Robert Garbinger, the corrupt head of this terrible corporation. And I just want to put a side note here that if Macon Blair had married Kevin Bacon, he would have been Macon Bacon. And that is just a missed opportunity right there. Elijah Wood, who is having a really, really fun time in this film, plays Fritz Garbinger, Robert's brother. He's a sort of cringing Uncle Fester character, unable to please Robert no matter what he does, though he does try. And Fritz also manages the Killer Nuts, with a Z, a monstercore band, which is a motley crew of assorted weirdos who it's sort of a Coen-esque parody, or a Slipknot thing. They also double as Fritz's goons if anybody needs to be disposed of, although they're much better at performing than they are actually completing any task he sets them. And the Killer Nuts features one guy who keeps doing what I can only describe of as like ineffectual parkour while they're trying to chase and kill people, which was one of the funniest things about this film for me. So when Winston stumbles on Taylor Page's character JJ, who's trying to expose all of the bad things this evil corporation has done, Winston is kind of caught in the crossfire, and he winds up being caught and thrown into toxic sludge, which, instead of killing him as we might expect, turns him into a green, blobby, crime-fighting splatterpunk hero, kind of. So I really enjoyed this film. I saw it pretty late. There were not too many people there. I see why distributors were reluctant to pick it up. It is really, really gory, and the film takes a great delight in being that kind of comic book, like over the top kills, ripping people's heads off, and various things. It is quite funny as well, and I feel like it would have absolutely killed with like a bigger audience, and a wider distribution. So I do hope it gets that. I hope that people get to see this film. I really enjoyed it. I am maybe not exactly the target audience for this. I do go and see a lot of the superhero films, to kind of see them, and because if you start missing them, then you don't know what's happening in the rest, and it's confusing. You got to do your homework, but this didn't feel like that, and I really would love to see those kind of come together if there's a wider universe that the Toxic Avenger could to turn up in. It felt like it didn't take itself very seriously. All of the place names are intentionally silly, like those yonder spooky woods, or calling there was something about the river as well being called something funny, and it kind of appealed to my sense of humor. Nothing is being taken too seriously. It's quite satirical. It's sort of self-effacing, and at the same time there is a bit of heart in it. I think casting anybody other than Peter Dinklage, it might have been pretty hard to sort of connect with them, but Dinklage, he just has such a wide range, and he brings this sort of pathos to everything he does, so you can really see with very little kind of actual dialogue, and a lot of kind of facial expressions and slightly minute adjustments, and just like waiting a beat too long at various times, you can see how he is just this guy who is really not equipped for the situation that he's found himself in any of the time, whether that's being a parent or fighting crime, but he is doing his best regardless. It's charming in a way. I didn't think charming was going to be a word I applied to this film, but it is charming. So if you are near a cinema that is playing the Toxic Avenger on unrated, do go and see it. I do highly recommend it.